Okay. Uh, Few are still joining us, but we shall start our program now. Good afternoon to all the participants. I'm Lal Nuntari Silo from Government Sarchip College. I welcome you all to the fourth day of International Webinar Learning in the 21st Century, regionally organized by Government Sarchip College and Higher Technical Institute of Mizoram. I would like to introduce a speaker, Dr. Vanal Thanzami. She is a senior lecturer in Department of Psychology, Monash University, Malaysia. She obtained her PhD in psychology from the University of Central Lancashire, UK in 2004. Her research activities focused on her PhD research area, beliefs about aggression and impact that culture has on these beliefs. She is predominantly interested in specific forms of aggression, such as direct aggression, indirect aggression, physical aggression, reactive and proactive aggression. The outcome of her various research projects have been published in reputable international peer-reviewed journals, such as Aggressive Behavior, Evolution and Human Behavior, American Journal of Human Biology, and Personality and Individual Differences, as well as being presented at international conferences. Her teaching expertise is within the areas of social, cross-cultural, and forensic psychology. As an active researcher in the area of aggression, she continuously strives to disseminate her research findings to her students through research-informed teaching. Now I shall hand it over the time to our speaker.
Uh, Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this your webinar series. Okay, let me just share my screen with you. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much, and it is indeed a pleasure to talk to you on a very topical issue that affects majority of us, especially in the current situation. Basically, I'm just going to talk to you today first about current research findings on social media engagement's impact on psychological well-being. So I'll just begin with that, and then I'll move on to my research on smartphone use. And the reason for this is because the use of smartphone, it is now being used extensively to engage with social media. So I will show you some of my my findings in this particular area. Okay, so why do we like social media? I think we can all say that there are many benefits to social engaging on social media. So basically, we're using social media as a medium for maintaining relationships. We are social beings, and we are always looking for connections. We use it as a way to form connections, to get updated about information, to share things with others. So basically, it's a channel, it's a medium where we feel that we have a voice. This is also a channel where we can get validation. We're continuously seeking validation, and we get validation from others. And sometimes we might be able to get validation immediately. So all it takes is just a click of a button to bring about this validation from others. It is also a channel for where we can present ourselves. So it is a medium for self-presentation. So while there might be many positive aspects associated with social media, and I think like there is compelling evidence also to suggest that like anything, overuse of social media can have detrimental effects. So even though we might feel good when we're thinking about social media, there is a lot of findings that suggest the detrimental effects. So I just want to show you the more recent findings in this particular area. So for example, with the use of social media for self-presentation, so people are continuously taking selfies and uploading their images on social media. But in the process of doing so, there is this new, a more recent psychological phenomenon referred to as Snapchat dysmorphia. So this is the need, that people are now seeking out surgery, so seeking surgery so that they can appear like the filtered versions of themselves. So for example, once you use a lot of filters, and this is how so people are actually seeking surgeries where they can look like that, like their filtered images. So obviously this is not this, this is quite a detrimental impact. And when it comes, so now, of course, there are various channels, there are various ways, various technologies available to, modify your appearance. So you can edit photos, you can use all these various filters and things like that. But how does, editing photos, does it have any kind of, pathological risks? So for example, research has found that people who post edited photos of themselves, they're at a greater risk for developing eating disorders. So people who are editing photos and posting it, they are more likely to, it tends to increase the concerns that they have about their shape and their weight. So again, you can see that there are negative impacts. So basically, it is not, editing photos is not a harmless behavior. So on, again, similarly with yes, filtering your photos and all those kind of things, we want to present our best sides, our best selves in when we post our selfies. But actually, overusing mechanisms such as filtering can have a negative impact on how other people actually evaluate your selfie. So while in the process of trying to present yourself in the best light possible, people might be evaluating you negatively if you overuse these filtering devices. So this is what recent research has found. In fact, what they found was also using social cues. So when people use social cues, they are much more likely to be liked by other people. The thing about using social cues, so social cues are things like, some form of self-disclosure. So some information regarding maybe, your demographics, so your age, your gender, or even like personal characteristics like your mood, how are you feeling. So when people present these photos of themselves alongside these social cues, they generally tend to be attributed positively compared to those people who only overuse filters and don't provide any social cues. Basically, what this is suggesting is that social cues such as this self-disclosure, it's telling people that the image is portraying is that it shows that you want to you're eager to engage with other people. So what people are going to think is that yes, this person is eager to engage, compared to somebody who does not post any, who does not include any social cues. So without social cues, all it's telling people is that, oh, this person just wants to show off themselves, so there is no information about that person. So this can have a negative impact on how people evaluate you. Then I think there's another really important issue that, excessive using social media, and maybe things that people may not have considered, but I think this is really important. This is about the term called sharenting. I don't know if you're aware of this, but basically sharenting is the overuse of social media by parents to post content about their children. And maybe this is something that newborn parents, parents of newborn children, so having with the birth of your child, you might parents might feel more compelled to share content about their children, and they want to document every step and every activity that they're taking. So this brings on privacy issues. This highlights a lot of privacy issues, but at the same time, I think this is what it's also really the important implications of this is about the disregard that adults might have when it comes to the children's rights or the children's best interest. So by posting these photos of their children, are they acting in the best interest of their children? And a lot of the time it might not be. So you're sharing all this personal details, information about your child. How safe is that? So privacy, safety issues it brings about. For the parent, it might fulfill that need to share and show everyone, document to the world that, oh, this is what my child is doing, and show that off. But is this within the best interest of the child? So this is something that I think is really important to consider. Um, with regards to psychological well-being, is there an association between the use of social media and depression? There have been quite a lot of research that has looked at this, and majority of them, a lot of them do show that yes, social media engagement is associated with depression, and there are more detailed studies looking at what is it about social media engagement that is associated with depression. So I'm not going to go into details, but I'm just going to give you a snapshot of this. So basically, yeah, social media engagement, what does it do? And this is particularly relevant for younger people. So engaging in social media, what does it involve? So it involves, there is lack of face-to-face interaction. So therefore, it's very isolating. So individuals become more isolated by continuous engagement with social media. And also, by continuously engaging with social media, it exposes them to the risk for cyberbullying. And also, I think continuous engagement with social media also challenges your self-esteem, especially when you're continuously, you might be comparing yourself to your peers. So as a result of peer comparison, it can be a challenge to your self-esteem. So one study that, one recent research that actually looked at, uh, data, this is from the United States, amongst young children, so who were in the 8th and the 10th grade. And this was a continuous survey going over many years. So from 2009 till 2017, they collected data for 8th and 10th grade students. And in a nutshell, they found that actually social media engagement is not associated with depressive symptoms. So this is just one of the studies that show that actually there is no association between social media engagement. But on the other hand, there's also plenty of research that suggests that yes, social media engagement is associated with depressive symptomatology. This research here that I'm just presenting, this is unpublished data, and this was a study that was carried out by one of my postgraduate students. And the student was looking at the relationship between social media engagement and depressive symptom, and they found that this was amongst Malaysian young adults, that the social media engagement is associated with depressive symptoms, and this relationship is driven or is partially mediated by envy, feelings of envy, and it is completely mediated, is fully mediated by a concept known as fear of missing out, because they are afraid of missing out. So it is not just a social media engagement, but it's fear of missing out. When you put that into the equation, that totally removes the effect of social media engagement, and it is associated with depressive symptomatology. On social media, okay, so basically when you are engaging with social media, what is, we said that people, we are social beings, and we are looking for connections and maintaining relationships and all those things, and that is what we do on social media. But how would you feel if you were excluded? So you're engaging on social media, but how would social exclusion on social media impact your behavior? And this research was looking at, they manipulated social exclusion in people's social media use. So one way that you can be excluded is if you are ignored, so ostracism. So imagine you post information on social media, or you connect with someone, but nobody responds to that. And how would you feel? So that is referred to as, so that is a form of exclusion, and that refers to ostracism. So you're just being ignored, nobody's responding to you. Another form of exclusion is in the process of through the process of rejection. So people respond to you, but it's negative feedback. So this study basically so they were manipulating all these, so people who were ostracized, people who were rejected, and people who were included, and they found that the people who were rejected and who were ostracized, they felt that that situation was a threat to their need to belong. Human beings are driven. Why do we like, so engaging with other people? Why are we trying to always form connections? Because we're driven by this inherent need to belong. And this also promotes our chances of survival and things like that. But when we are excluded, it is a threat to our need to belong. So those who were rejected and those who were ostracized, they felt that this was a threat to their need to belong. And this was felt much more for those who were rejected, so those who got negative feedback. And how do people who are rejected or who are ignored, how do they cope with that situation? So the way they cope actually is also quite different, because those who are ostracized, so those who are ignored, they will they will carry out more pro-social behavior. And that's because they're being ignored, they want people to respond to them and people to like them and to involve them. So they will demonstrate more pro-social behavior. On the other hand, those people who are rejected, who are given negative feedback, they will just withdraw. They will withdraw from any kind of social interactions because of this rejection and how it has impacted them. Um, Another research, still on the note of, what are we doing when we are on social media? We're using it to connect to other people. So what is our motives for connecting? So one study looked at Twitter users' motives for connecting with people on Twitter. And they found that people who are chronically ostracized, so that means basically always ignored and rejected, they were more likely to, so the kind of, their need for belongingness is threatened as well. And to satisfy their need for belongingness, they will engage, they will use Twitter. And the type of connections they make on Twitter, this is called the kind of relationships they form and maintain is referred to as parasocial relationships. Basically, parasocial relationships is having a one-sided relationship with somebody who might be a media figure or a celebrity. So it's one-sided. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a real person as well. So because I know that there are lots of Twitter accounts that have been opened in the name of, fictitious people. So maybe a character from a TV series or a cartoon character. So forming this kind of, maintaining and forming these parasocial relationships, this is a way, this is the way, one of the ways in which people who are chronically ostracized um, will um, will attempt to meet their need for belongingness, which has been threatened because they're constantly, chronically ostracized. And in with regards to the need to belong, so you can assess individuals' need to belong, and there are individual differences on here. So some people have a higher, greater need to belong, whereas others have less need to belong. So for those who are chronically ostracized and who also had a high need to belong, they were much more likely to form and maintain these parasocial relationships. So that is the motivation. So in this way, their unmet needs for belongingness is being um, um, is being is being followed through. So how, when we talk about the amount of time that we spend on the internet, is there an association between, how much is too much time and how much is just enough time? So basically, with regards to the screen time and how it can impact psychological well-being, generally the initial explanation for this is referred to as the displacement hypothesis. So the displacement hypothesis, basically, as the name suggests, is very straightforward. It just says that, the more time you spend on the more screen time you spend, then the more detrimental the impact. Why? because it's the amount of time you're spending on screen is displacing the time that you would be spending in other activities. So other like sort of like activities that bring about that have a positive impact on your well-being. So for example, uh, it displaces the time that you would probably spend, doing physical activities, exercising, even sleeping, or having face-to-face real physical connections with other people. So this was the initial explanation. So more screen time basically means more negative outcome. But these researchers have actually argue that this displacement hypothesis is just very simplistic, and it's not, it does not have, more time does not have a detrimental effect. And they bring up, and they propose this digital Goldilocks hypothesis in terms of how screen time is associated with well-being. So I think you all know the story of Goldilocks. So Goldilocks is, say for example, looking at the porridge, saying one porridge is too hot, one is too cold, and one is just right. So there is a just right level when it comes to screen time and how it impacts well-being. So you can see that there's a curvilinear relationship. Looking at all these graphs, you can see, and this is, so here, this is the amount of time spent, and this is well-being. And you can see there's a curvilinear. So less time maybe spent is less well-being, but as the time increases, psychological well-being increases, but up to a point. And after that, if time increases, then psychological well-being decreases as well. So this is, this is their proposal in terms of screen time and psychological well-being. So on that note, I think I will move into my research on smartphone overuse or problematic smartphone use. So I'm sort of like using these terms interchangeably. I think, as I mentioned earlier, that the smartphone is one of the most commonly used, extensively used gadgets on which you access, social media and things like that. So I think we can all agree that at least in the last decade, there has been a huge increase in the use of smartphones. And they, just like any, technological innovations and advancements and things like that, it is necessary. Technological innovations and all that is necessary, and it is a requisite for a developing society. But the flip side of that is, too much of these, too much engagement of with these technological innovations can bring about negative consequences. So now we are using the smartphone a lot, and why? Because of it's convenient, it's portable. We are able to access the internet on it. It has various, the app content, the features and things like that, as well as using it as a medium for connecting with people. But because, it is providing a lot of enjoyment for the people who are using it, there is the flip side, as I said, is that it can bring about negative consequences. So there may be a danger of overusing the gadget. And so problematic smartphone use has been defined as excessive use of smartphones, and it can lead to tolerance withdrawal symptoms and also disability, functional impairments in your daily living. So you're using it to the extent that it impairs your daily living, and it has been found to resemble the symptoms of smartphone problematic smartphone use or smartphone overuse. The symptoms have tend to resemble that of substance use disorder. So looking at some of the consequences of problematic smartphone use, I think this is just some literature that I have listed. So it impacts, your sleep, physical fitness, even things like musculoskeletal problems, other physical health-related issues. psychological states, anxiety, depression, stress, suicidal ideation. It also impacts on productivity, and not just in the workplace, but also productivity at home. And of course, it has negative consequences for in academia, academic performance. So yes, problematic smartphone use is a global concern. And there was this recent meta-analysis that was conducted amongst young people, so amongst children and young people. And this was a combination of, I think it was about 41 studies, and they had just under 42,000 participants. And they found that the prevalence of problematic smartphone use was just under a quarter of the people of the sample, which is really concerning, considering, you know, this is a quarter of their sample, just under a quarter of their sample who are experiencing problematic smartphone use. And also, who is more vulnerable, who is most vulnerable to problematic smartphone use? It is females and those who are aged between 17 to 19 years. So basically, young people are vulnerable to that. Um, the reasons that males and females use smartphone actually does differ. So, for example, males are using it mainly for, gaming and looking at media apps and things like that, whereas females are using it for communication, using communication apps and social networking apps. And in this series of study, in this meta-analysis, they found that yes, problematic smartphone use was associated with all these psychological factors such as depression, anxiety, even educational performance. And this is a concern in a number of countries, and I don't know if you have seen this article. This was something that CNN broadcast, I think, sometime last year, that in South Korea they are so concerned about this for teenagers using, smartphone overuse, that they're actually having these detox camps where they go and they're removed from their digital or all these their gadgets, and they spend about 12 days in this camp and doing other things, other activities. Now, I don't know if this is effective or not, but programs such as this, I think it highlights the importance of why we need to evaluate intervention programs. So, it's not enough to just say, oh, okay, there are these detox centers or whatever, but are they actually working? And how can we make this more effective? Is this the way to go? This is the way to go in order to tackle the problem? So these are things that we have to we have to consider as we go along. So I just want to show you some statistics because I carried out this study in Malaysia. So I want to show you some statistics relating to Malaysia. So in the smartphone users survey, the most recent handphone user survey, they found that smartphone use was almost 76%. So 76% of those who were in the survey, who took part, the responders, were smartphone users. What are they using their smartphones for? Basically, things like text messaging, voice calls. But I think you can see also that as the years progress, the type of things that they use the smartphone for also changes with time. So with the greater use of smartphones, and there's a greater dependence on smartphones or on our smartphones. So we feel we have this compulsion to continuously or constantly check our phones. And in this in the survey, they found the responders. So it was just about a quarter of the people responding were constantly checking their phones. And I think you can see from this figure that it is more than half of so about 60% of those who responded have the need to check their phones every few hours, from constantly up to every few hours. It's only less than half who are only checking it when they get a notification. And this survey also found that, because of this dependence on smartphone, that people, at least 80% of the people, the responders, they felt anxious if they did not have their smartphone with them. And for example, if they went out and they left their smartphone behind, they would go back home to get their smartphone. And they were also, and this was particularly so for the younger participants. And they also less than well, about 80%, or a little over 80% also were more likely to just wake up in the middle of the night and check their phones. And also they could not do without checking their phone. They could not last 1 hour without checking their phone after waking up. So as you can see in this from this figure, so who has the need to when do they the amount of time that they take to check their phone after waking up. So a little over a quarter of them immediately waking up, they check their phone. And here, yes, you can see that about 80% of them cannot last, they're checking it within the hour of waking up. And the internet user survey, a recent internet user survey in Malaysia, what it was also, what it also shows is that the smartphone is the gadget of choice when it comes to accessing the internet. So about 93% of them are using it as are using it to check their are using the smartphone to get on the internet. I don't know if you are aware of this. I think there was a survey that was carried out in India. This is the cyber media research, CMR, and they carried out this research looking at the average um, um, the average Indian, how much time do they spend on their phone. And they found that they spent 1/3 of their waking hours on their phone. And 1/3 of their waking hours, this equates to approximately 1,800 hours per year that they spend on their phone. And when people are using their phones, they might be doing other activities as well. So what are the other activities that they are doing as they use their phones? So things like more than half of the responders use their phone during a meal. Now, again, this, you can see how this can be quite detrimental to social relationships also. What do you use, what is the purpose of meal times? So meal times is when, you share and you talk to each other. But if people are engaging, are just engaging with their phones at this time, then you can see how this can impact their social relationships. And also, using the phone and eating, this is not a good habit either, because it can be detrimental to your eating behavior. Other things like other bad habits, again, things like checking their using their phone before going to sleep. This can have a negative impact on their ability to sleep because of the kind of light that the phone emits. And also waking up in the middle of the night to check and checking their phones. So sometimes people might just check their phone and be able to go back to bed, but a lot of the times it disrupts your sleep quality. Other dangerous activities such as driving while they are carrying out their while they are using their phone. Again, this is a dangerous activity. This is some data that I found from Statistica. This is for India, the data for India about mobile phone users and who use a smartphone. And this is from the data from 2014 and projected for the future for up to 2022. And you can see that there is the trend is increasing. And this is about the number of the social network users, again, from 2015 to 2018, and then moving on, like projecting for up to 2013. Again, you can see that this is increasing. Okay, so these are just some other data that I've got from We Are Social. Again, this is looking at mobile connections for Malaysia in terms of the total number of mobile connections, and this is the data for India. And this is about mobile activities. So this is the percentage of the internet users what kind of activities do they engage on, what kind of activity do they carry out on their mobile phone. And so things like, so that's for Malaysia, and this is for India. So majority of them are doing it, using mobile messengers and things like that. This is again data for Malaysia about frequency of internet use, and for India, you see like majority of them are using it at least once per week. So from every day to at least once per week. So this is the same for India as well. And this is the amount of time they spend with the media. So for Malaysia, on average, 8 hours per day, and India just slightly behind, just under 8 hours. So with all these statistics and data that you can see, and the trend in to which we are moving, I think you can see that this is going to increase. And currently also our situation is making us engage with gadgets such as the smartphone. So now a lot of people are having online classes and things like that. So maybe they don't necessarily have a computer or a laptop, but they might have the smartphone, the gadgets. So they're using that and spending more time because of the, of how we have to adapt to our current situation. So on that note, when we talk about problematic smartphone use, is it, can we say that it is overuse, or can we refer to this overuse as addiction? So now there's a number of important points that we have to bear in mind. Okay, first and foremost, when it comes to this smartphone use, because it is a 21st century problem, there's not been a lot of, we don't have much research background in this. So the research in this area is very limited. And when we're looking at, we're talking about we're using the term overuse. Can we use this interchangeably with addiction? So while that may be the case, people tend to use these two terms interchangeably. Basically, they are not, they're strictly not the same, overuse and addiction. So basically, addiction is defined as, so this is with regards to substance addiction. So it is defined as a state of loss of self-control, even though negative consequences are expected by using a specific substance. So this is relating to a substance. However, with our technological innovations and things like that, we are now, we are now engaging more with machines, for example. So we're not technically, overusing or being addicted to a substance per se, but it is more about that human-machine interaction. So that technological advancements, such as smartphone and all those, these are the things that it's bringing about. So, for example, other behaviors brought on by these technological innovations, things like gaming behavior, online gambling, internet addiction, and all this. So these are referred to as behavioral issues, behavioral addiction. But but are they actually classified as addictions according to the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of mental disorders? Is it classified as that? But a lot of these technical addictions, so-called technical addictions or overuse, is not classified by the, is not recognized, acknowledged by the DSM. So why is that? When we think about this, overuse of technology and things like that, it is very much the main components of this overuse behavior of technology is very much similar to that of addictive behaviors. So substance addiction behaviors, so things like salience, loss of control, tolerance, withdrawal, and things like that. So because it is similar to that, researchers have called on the need to refer to this as a psychiatric disorder. So these technological overuse, they should be regarded as psychiatric disorders as well. But as I've mentioned, it is only when it comes to behavioral disorders, behavioral issues, behavioral addictions. Gambling disorder is the only behavioral disorder that is recognized, acknowledged by the DSM. And in fact, actually, the gaming disorder, it has now been acknowledged by DSM in internet gaming disorder, but it is still not acknowledged as a disorder. It is just set there for further research. So it is under the conditions for further research. So until we know further, until we have further findings regarding that, it will still not be considered a disorder. So basically, what all this means is that even though these technological issues, or all these technological problems, using of these of technology is bringing about a lot of problems, they are still not considered officially as a as a diagnostic disorder, as a diagnosed disorder. So I think this further emphasizes and highlights the fact why we need to have more continuous research is required, and why there is a need for mounting evidence with regards to this particular this behavior. The other thing also is that when it comes to smartphone overuse, this behavior, it is lacking in evidence when it comes regarding the neurobiological and psychological mechanisms that are related to the etiology of smartphone overuse. So while other like substance addiction, it has been found to there are neurobiological and psychological mechanisms that can explain the etiology of substance addiction, as well as behavioral addictions such as gambling disorder. But this kind of evidence is lacking for smartphone overuse, for smartphone use. But I think also this brings about another issue that relates to diagnosing. When we diagnose, like the danger can we can bring about the danger regarding over pathologizing the behavior. So for example, just a normal or healthy use of smartphone can be regarded as problematic smartphone use. So this might bring about over pathologizing a behavior which is otherwise considered normal or healthy. And even if we were to diagnose this as okay, this is overuse, how do we know, where do we draw the line, where do we make that cutoff between what is normal, how long, how much time is regarded as healthy and how much time is regarded as problematic. So that is why it is important to continue to assess problematic smartphone use. And one way of doing that is, you can screen for a problematic smartphone use. Like any other behavior, it can be assessed via questionnaire. And problematic smartphone use has been used, has been assessed by other types of gadget overuse, so such as internet addiction or gaming addiction, internet gaming addiction. So those measures that have assessed those behaviors have just been transferred over. So they've just substituted, smartphone for those terms. However, I think it is quite obvious that there is a problem with this, that there are certain characteristics that are unique characteristics that are associated with the smartphone that are not associated with internet use or gaming behavior. So there was a need to actually develop a smartphone overuse screening questionnaire developed by these researchers. so that it could tap into those unique characteristics that are not involved in gaming or internet behavior. And this measure um, included 28 items, and this was the first step towards identifying people who might be at risk of overusing their smartphone, and this would bring about, this could lead to addressing issues relating prevention and intervention of these of relevant measures that are relevant to this particular behavior. So this is an example of, these are some of the example items from this measure. There are 28 items, and it has been found to have good psychometric properties. And the authors have found that the authors advise that this is the score of 49 is the cutoff. So anyone above that is regarded as being, being at risk for smartphone overuse. But they also advise that to maximize sensitivity for screening purpose, and also to minimize false negatives, so use this cutoff score of 41. So just quickly going into the causal theories of smartphone overuse. These theories have actually been transferred over, or are very much related to how internet addiction has been explored, and they are negative and positive reinforcement models. So, for example, habitual use and habitual use of this of the behavior of smartphone, and how that you continue to check, so that leads to smartphone overuse. Also the need to seek reassurance from other people. So smartphone addiction, smartphone overuse is driven by the need to maintain our relationship with other people and to seek reassurance from other people, and also because we are reluctant to miss out information. So all these pathways, they are actually used to, they involve behaviors that relieve negative emotions. On the other hand, you have mood enhancement. This is the positive reinforcement model, and this suggests that we become we engage in the reason why we have or why we overuse our smartphone, first and foremost, is because we want to enhance our mood. So because we use the phone a lot, it enhances, we feel better, and in the process of feeling better, we continue to check our phones. But then when we become more it becomes a more compulsive behavior, and therefore it brings about negative behaviors, negative feelings, if we don't engage in that particular behavior. So all these models demonstrate to show things like, how fear of missing out, because we are driven by this need to stay connected, how this might lead to smartphone overuse. And also smartphone overuse has been found to affect mood states such as depression, anxiety, stress, and other systematic reviews have also shown that, yes, all these psychological states are associated with smartphone overuse. And also loneliness and lack of social connectedness, they are very much associated with smartphone overuse, particularly amongst university students. So my research was looking at the prevalence of smartphone overuse amongst Malaysian university students, considering the fact, that they are at risk, that they're vulnerable. And I also wanted to look at mood states and symptomatology, and also look at the relationship between symptomatology and psychological factors and phone use. And these were some of the factors that I looked at. And it was predicted that those who are at higher risk for smartphone overuse, they will they will show more negative psychological factors, and also that smartphone overuse will predict negative mood states and symptomatology, and that the relationship between smartphone overuse and psychological symptoms will be mediated, will be driven by some psychological factors such as fear of missing out, loneliness, and social connectedness. So there were 388 university students who took part in this study. And I used the smartphone overuse screening questionnaire that I showed you an example of. And to assess depression, anxiety, and stress, I used the DAS-21. The UCLA loneliness scale was used to assess loneliness. Social connectedness was used, scale was used to assess levels of social connectedness, and positive and negative affects scale was used to assess positive and negative feelings, mood states. And finally, fear of missing out was used to assess um, their the tendency to be afraid of missing out. And so these are all some of the example items. I'm just rushing because I think I've taken quite a lot of time, and I think I've almost used up my 45 minutes. So the findings were that yes, there was just under a quarter of the participants were at risk, showed high score. They were at risk for smartphone overuse. And comparing those who are at high risk and low risk, again, consistent with our hypotheses, all the negative psychological factors were associated with those who were at high risk for smartphone overuse. So those who are at high risk for smartphone overuse showed higher levels of loneliness, high levels of fear of missing out, greater anxiety, depression, stress, and negative affect. And they also showed lower levels of positive affect and lower levels of social connectedness compared to the low risk individuals. Looking at the association between social connectedness and loneliness and fear of missing out and smartphone use, all these three factors significantly predicted smartphone overuse. And again, smartphone overuse was also significantly predicted by all these symptomatology, mood states, and symptomatology. So anxiety, depression, stress, and negative affect. Now, looking at the relationship between smartphone use and symptomatology, and to see if that was mediated by the psychological factors of social connectedness, fear of missing out, and loneliness, you can see all of them, they tell the same story. They are the relationship between smartphone overuse and depression, anxiety, and stress are all partially mediated by these psychological factors. So coming to the end of my talk, what do these findings suggest? So basically, we can see that the prevalence rate is very much similar to those that have been reported by past research. And what you can see also here is that it is actually quite a concern. It is concerning because we've said that problematic smartphone use mirrors behavioral addiction. So therefore, to have this high level of, people who might be at risk for smartphone overuse is quite concerning. And we can also see the extent to which young adults are vulnerable to this. And these findings also replicate all the other past research that show the negative effects of smartphone overuse. And we can see from here that it is important to address, the use of smartphones. So, like, they can be used in a useful manner, and they might also be used in a harmful manner. And how we can differentiate between that. So I think the research such as this drives the striving to find these solutions to problems such as this. I think it also highlights a really important issue regarding need for diagnostic definition. It is important to have a valid definition so that we can identify people who might be, who might have this problem. And you can see again also that it's not just it's not just in isolation. Smartphone overuse and mental health outcomes do not just happen in isolation. There are various psychological factors that might be driving this association. But based on my findings, even though these psychological factors did mediate the relationship, you can see the level of mediation, the variance accounted for by the mediation is pretty small. So depression only accounts for 8%, and anxiety and stress even less, 7%, which indicates that there might be many other factors that mediate this relationship. How do we combat this issue? Yes, findings, research can bring about public awareness. So, it is important to be aware of the risks that are associated with smartphone overuse. And who are the people who should be aware of these things? So, for example, parents, teachers, healthcare providers, and maybe even it can contribute towards government policies when it comes to, useful use of smartphone. And it can generate further research, longitudinal research. Currently, most of the research are only looking at cross-sectional studies. They're not looking at the longitudinal, the long-term impacts of smartphone overuse. So longitudinal studies are important, even having like cohort studies. So who is more vulnerable? As we can see, the trend that the research is showing is that young people are more vulnerable. So look at, let's say, adolescents or even younger children, and how that might impact, how their use of smartphones might impact their mental, their well-being. And continue to look at causal factors as well as risk factors. And I think what research, what this particular area also, highlights another important issue is things like, should we just have this blanket view that, too much gadget use, too much smartphone use is detrimental? Uh, Considering our climate today, the world we live in today, so more and more people are using the smartphone now, because that is the only way that they can sort of engage maybe with their school work, with their university work. So is it about, the amount of time someone is using their smartphone, or is it more about, what people are actually doing on when they're using their smartphone, which is a more important factor? So is it just about timing, or the things that they are doing on, while they are engaging in, while they're using their smartphone? So this opens ideas and, implications for future research. So I think that's the end of my talk. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tanzami. Since we are a bit run out of time, we just headed to our questions and answer. Okay. Question number 1. Ma'am, can you see the questions?
Oh, okay.
Can you see?
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll answer. Okay.
I'll just read out for the participants. Okay. As a student, how long does one should engage himself with social media?
Again, so see, as what I was saying is that there is no fixed amount of time. So it's not about it's not that straightforward and black or in black and white that says, okay, this is the amount of time that is that is recommended. But it also depends upon the things that you're doing. So that's what I was saying, that is it really about the amount of hours you're spending, or is it more to do with the kind of things that you are doing? So I think you can, if you're using a smartphone, if you're using the smartphone for it as an essential use, then maybe psychologically it might not impact you. But in the whole process, like of continuous use for the physiological factors, like and how it might, let's say, even if you're doing essential work, but you're doing so much of that, and you're losing out sleep, for example. And we all know sleep is important. So if you're losing sleep over this, then again, it can impact various areas of your life, not just psychological, but other functionings as well. Okay.
Okay. Um, the next question, and the two succeeding questions can be related. So I think you can answer in one go, but I'll just read out the 3 questions. Miss, can you please suggest me the ways to reduce my usage of smartphones? Another anonymous attendee asks, how can we control ourselves from game addiction? And here another questions. How can we restrict control smartphone use like YouTube games over toddlers, kids? I think you can answer those three in one go.
Okay, so how do you control yourself from game addiction? So the whole point about addiction is that see all those things that are associated with addiction. To the extent that it impacts your life and it affects your, your daily functioning and all those kind of things. To what I as somebody who researches motivations, my take on this would be the motivations for why you engage in these behaviors. So understanding the motivation. So is it like a way of is it because of boredom? Are you, because you're bored, you're engaging in these activities, or is it because this is a way to you're fulfilling your needs, so because your peers are doing all this. So based on those motivations, that's how I would make that suggestion. So for example, if you're doing it out of boredom, then maybe you would need to find something else that you you can use your time that you can spend instead of engaging in this behavior. But it is not again, these are not straightforward questions to answer, so I you cannot have this there might be various suggestions, and I think some of them research has found to be effective. So for example, finding other activities and all that. But this is not a kind of suggestion that fits everyone. It's not a one size fits all kind of suggestion. And there are individual differences as well. So I think this is the best way I can suggest. And about restricting YouTube games controls and all that, I think there are various kind of controls available, but a lot of it and most of it is down to uh, maybe while there might be facilities that are in place, so you can have all these controls and all those kind of things, but it's also about monitoring your children's behavior. What are your children doing? Are you just leaving them to do their own thing? So uh, it's about, again, connecting with your children and ensuring that they're not left unsupervised, and it depends on how old they are as well, so they're not left unsupervised. Games, so is it necessary for toddlers to play these games? But that's how the way the world is moving on now. Even toddlers have all these smart gadgets and things like that. So rather than seeing, like, whether there are controls in place, while they might be very useful, um, what is more important is monitoring them and being aware of what they're doing, what our children are doing.
Okay, another question. Can a cartoon character influence the character of a child? Example, a child acting like Mr. Bean because his favorite show is Mr. Bean.
Oh,
Interesting
yes.
one.
Children are, everyone, not it's not just children, everybody is highly influenced. We're really influenceable, or whatever, if that's the word. We get influenced a lot. So children, if they're continuously seeing characters like this, yes, it is possible to get, because the media, the things that they see on the media, it has a spillover effect. It spills over into into their reality. So for them, this is for, so it makes it difficult also for children, especially children, to know the difference between what is reality and what is fiction. So that is why uh, too much of this, like, media consumption for children, there's compelling evidence that shows that it has a detrimental effect on children. But again, having said that, it doesn't mean that they should be free of all forms of media. That is not what we say. It's about some level. There should be some amount, in moderation. It should not be a problem. But again, um, there are individual differences as well. So while somebody might have might be exposed to moderate media, might have moderate media consumption, someone else who also has a similar moderate media consumption, they might be more impacted than the other person who has equal amount of media consumption.
Okay. The next question, what could be the symptoms of mobile addiction?
So mobile addiction would be all about, so all those things that I mentioned. So continuously checking your phone, always, that's the first and that's the most important thing, being anxious when you're not with your phone. But again, as I mentioned, that this is not diagnosed, the DSM does not acknowledge this as a disorder. So we can't say that it is a disorder yet. So, but, you know, so that's why it becomes difficult also to define that. So that's why I mentioned the need for defining what this overuse is. And unless we continue with research and getting all these findings, we will not be able to pursue this further. So that's why we have to continue looking into this issue.
Okay, the last question. Miss, do you think overuse of smartphone leads to family problems in our day-to-day life? Please, can you
Uh,
share?
so of course, gadget overuse, what is it doing? So if it's taking over your life, therefore you're always on your phone or you're always on your gadgets. So it is limiting the kind of face-to-face, one-on-one relationship that you have with people who are close to you. So yes, it will be. There's evidence to suggest that yes, it is detrimental for social relationships. So not just social relationships, not just personal family relationships also, but it has other impacts on your work relationships. For example, at work, it can be counterproductive. So it impacts on your ability to be productive and things like that.
Okay. Um, since we are run out of time, we shall head towards the end of our session. I would like to thank our speaker for sparing her valuable time and give us an informative lecture and make us aware of the negative impacts and overuse of social media and smartphones. Please do remember that there is still 8 p.m. webinar tonight. As for now, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
And
Mm.
yeah, 10 p.m. is, no, 8 p.m. for you is a bit late for me. It's like 10:30 over here. So it's my sleep time, I think. But
Okay,
anyway, and
okay.
thank you to all the participants for listening, for logging in and listening to this talk. I hope you have found it useful. And so on that note, I will say good night. Thank you. Kalome Mangcha.
Yeah, Mangcha.